1 Corinthians chapter number 16, and it is missions conference. We've assembled for that purpose to be thinking about missions, missionaries, the gospel going out here and abroad. And this morning I want to just sort of chat with you. This is not a biblical exegesis, but I'm going to talk to you on the subject of how to pray for a missionary. And sometimes people will come to me, and sometimes even our Thai people who've been saved, and they will say in Thai, they will say, Pastor, I'm praying for you. And I often will ask them, I will say, what are you praying? And I'm not trying to play games with them, but I'm challenging them to think about what they're praying. Because I think there's a danger that you can sort of go into auto mode, and if our prayers are going to be effectual, we want to be God-led in the things we pray. But so I challenge them to think about what they're saying. I remember with my children, we would give thanks before we ate a meal, and over the course of many years, you eat many meals and you pray those prayers many times. But I would challenge our kids to not be repetitious and not pray in a way that is not meaningful. And you can't, I'm not asking them to change the prayer all the time when you're praying about the same thing, but prayer ought to be from our heart, and it ought to be meaningful. And sometimes people just don't know what things you should pray. And even you get a prayer letter from a missionary, there are some things they can't say, because nowadays prayer letters don't just go to your supporting churches, but many people have access to them. And you've always got to be mindful when you're sending a prayer letter that other people will be reading this. So in my case, that means that the authorities in Thailand who do monitor what we do will certainly be reading my prayer letters. And they do. And so, I have to be careful. I can't say some of the things I'd like to say. And so this just affords an opportunity, I think, to be a little more detailed. So the verse I just wanted to launch from was verse number 9 of chapter 16, where the Apostle Paul said, "For a great door and effectual is opened unto me, and there are many adversaries." And I want to tell you that any work of God in any place will have adversaries. And you should accept that and digest that. Because sometimes when adversities arise against the work of God, it's like we're shocked. Or I remember my unsaved mother, who got saved before she died, but I remember my unsaved mother used to say to me when I was in the ministry, and something would happen in the church, and mum is mum, and mum would say, well, Wayne, what did you do to make them angry? And I'd say, well, mum, I don't know what I did. I don't think I did anything. And she'd say, well, no, you must have done something, because people just don't do that. Well, live long enough in the work of God and you'll realize people do that. Because the devil uses people to try to frustrate and stop the work of God. And he'll do it in your life, by the way. He'll use people to aggravate you, to disturb you, to frustrate you. And so that happens a lot on the mission field. And missionaries are constantly dealing with things like that. So most missionaries are excited about going to their field, and that's good. And they go there with hope, and you've got to have hope. And they go there believing what God might do. But it won't take long, and the presence of adversaries are going to appear. You will not do the work of God in any place unopposed. And if you did, you'd be the first person to ever do it. Because anybody who ever did the work of God in any place will have opposition from some or many sources. So you can expect that. So Paul was just saying, he said, I have a door opened. It's effectual. It's going to be blessed. but I would have you to understand there will be opposition. There are many adversaries. Now, he didn't shrink back on the task because of that. He was not intimidated. He may have been nervous, I don't know. Well, I think I could point to some verses that would indicate he probably was. But he didn't shrink back from doing the work of God. So how to pray for a missionary? The first thing I want to say to you is that one of the things that has hurt missionaries, I think, and people understanding missionaries, has been the modern sort of phenomena of tourism. So if I say to someone, they say, well, where are you? And I say, I'm in Thailand. They will say, oh, I love Thai food. Right. Okay. Thailand, right? The islands, Phuket, love it. Love it. You know, and what happens is, because we've all now been to many places we never got to before, we think we understand those places. Oh yeah, I went there, loved the food, great beaches, terrific, wonderful weather. People are so friendly, and there's some truth to that, but that's not the reality of being a missionary in those places. It is very, very different. And I think in years gone by, when you would see a missionary off, perhaps he was leaving from England, you would accompany him to the train station, and he would get on a steam locomotive and make his way down to the harbour, and then he would get on a ship and he would sail away for several months, and then finally get to their destination if they made it, and you would not hear from him for many years. And sometimes people were sent out to find out if they were still there. And I think in those days there was a certain mystique about missions, and missionaries were perhaps esteemed a little more in that day, and I think it was probably harder in many ways. But now, because we all travel and we all have technology, and now we have National Geographic, and we all watch documentaries on everything, we all feel so familiar. And what I'm saying to you is that if you're actually a missionary in any of these countries, it's nothing like being a tourist. Okay, your whole situation changes, and a lot of things become present in your life that are not there if you're a tourist. So depending on what country you're in, the authorities are going to notice you. Okay, there's nowhere you can go and fly under the radar. Okay, a lot of people think they're flying under the radar. That just means they haven't confronted you yet, but they're always aware that you're there, and that's just a constant. So he's not a tourist, and he's not on a holiday, and probably how you had your holiday is not how he's living his life. He's trying to do the work of God. You were there for a good time, and sometimes those lovely, friendly people who are lovely and friendly become quite tenacious when you're actually trying to win them to Christ, or actually try to do something in the work of God. It's a very different situation. That's why I caution people, when you go to a field for a visit and you have a wonderful time, we want you to have a wonderful time, and you get all enamored with this place and the people, we want you to enjoy it, but we also want you to understand, if you come back there to live and stay there and actually trying to win people to Christ and live there, and then try to do something with those people who've trusted Christ, you're going to have great challenges. And it is very different. So we want to have a realistic understanding of what it's like for a missionary to be on the mission field. And every field is different, but there are probably some similarities to every field as well. So how do you pray? Number one, pray about his visa situation. So I never had to worry about that. I just flew in, but you were a tourist, and they're fine for that. But these other people want to stay there. And do you understand that most countries of the world do not get excited about missionaries coming to them? Right. And if you don't, you should understand that. Yep. We were just discussing how India is closing up more and more and more, yep, and more aggressively. When I paid a visit there a few years ago, I was bombarded with threatening text messages. Somehow they got my phone number, about 150 messages over 3 days saying, we'll kill you, We'll find you. We know where you are. Get out now while you're still alive. And that was an organized, militant Hindu group that monitors people coming in from outside. So there are a lot of opposition. So governments are not sort of easily disposed to granting visas. And that's often a big pressure on a missionary's mind because he wants to get on with the work. He wants to know that next year I'm going to be here. And when you have this cloud hanging over you all the time of, well, you know, you might be asked to leave, or you've got 3 months, but we may not renew it. Or you got this 12 months, but you might not be getting any more. So visa issues are real issues. And I guess it's one of the things that's hard to understand unless you're there, but it is something to definitely pray about. Yep. And even ask the missionary, how's your visa situation? Without probing all the details, but he might say, or she might say, look, actually, if you could pray about that, that would be a blessing. So you would pray that God would grant the way for them to be able to stay there, grant the visa that they would need, however they're going about that, grant that they would have favor with the authorities there. And so those would be the kind of prayers you could pray about his visa situation. And then pray that they have what they need financially. All right, so I remember when I went into the ministry in Australia and took our first church of, you know, about 8 people, meeting on some plastic chairs in a schoolroom, and I worked 3 jobs. I worked, you know, just to be in the ministry. I worked 1 job in the morning that ended at 8 in the morning, and I'd finish that 3 hours, and then I'd go to work through the day. I'd get home and have dinner for an hour, and then I'd go to my night work. And I was able to do that. But when you're on the mission field, you can't lawfully just get a job. Right. And that's what you have to understand. He doesn't have the capacity to say, okay, support was down this month, or the bills were up, or we don't know what we're going to do. Well, I'll just go and get a job. Many of them would gladly do that. They're not lazy, but they're prohibited by the legalities of the country to do that. And you have to understand, when they go, they're entirely dependent on people at home being faithful to their church and faithful to their giving. They don't have an option, and it can be terribly discouraging for a missionary to get his monthly support and realize, oh no, what are we going to do? You know, which of the staff do we not pay? Or how do we pay the electricity bill? What do we do? So that's a good prayer. God, provide them with what they need to be able to do the work there. God, touch the hearts of people who would give to that work. God, move on preachers and churches. And by the way, when you get a blessing, when you get a financial blessing, remember your church, but maybe remember the mission field as well. Amen. And however God directs you with that, but just, you know, let God lead. The Lord might say, I've blessed you. You know, I learned a long time ago that everything that comes to my hand is not meant to stay there. I've learned from the Lord that what is given to me does not mean it's mine. And so I want to be God-directed, and I know this is a giving church, but that's something to pray. Number 3, pray he gets a good night's sleep. All right? Because when you can't sleep, your mind becomes very assailed, and your strength diminishes, and the devil uses that against missionaries on foreign fields. I remember when we went to Nakhon Sawan. It's dark. There's a lot of demonic things there, and you know I won't share all that this morning, but I tell you it's real. It's there, and we stayed in a house. There were other houses around us, and it's very, very hot, and we didn't have any air conditioning, and you know it was all fine. But you'd go to sleep at night, and the strangest phenomena would happen at our house. And what would happen, and my wife says she'd tell you that, is about 20 or sometimes, 23, 22 dogs would start coming in from all different areas. And they'd make their way up the street to where we were. And then and my wife's going, because those dogs would just sit outside our house, and they would not bark, they would howl. And they would go, "Woo!" And they'd all do it together. And the first time you're like, no, go away. And you don't think too much of it, but when it's happening for hours and hours every night, and your Thai neighbours are coming out going, and they're picking up, this is odd, this is not normal. What is happening here? All right, and then you can't sleep. And then you've got to get up in the morning and you're assailed or something else is happening. And when you can't sleep, you can't function. Right. And our enemy uses that. Our special forces in our military learn how to deprive people from sleep. And they learn how to cope with it themselves as best they can. But they also understand there's a limit, that you can only go so far. And so pray your missionary can sleep, that they can get a good night's rest. Next, pray that God would lead him to people, so divine appointments, that God would direct his steps, his path or her path, that they're going to meet people and it's divinely orchestrated by God, and that person is ready and or open, or they're going to be, and that they will get an opportunity. Divine appointments. And pray for that. God, give him, give her divine appointments. God, lead them to people who will be open. And that's a specific prayer you'll pray. You'll hear some testimonies with some of our Thais are here with us these few days. O's going to share his testimony tonight of how he got saved. That was a divine appointment. And so that's a practical way to pray for a missionary. Pray for his language ability. All right, so some are learning, and some have already got, ability there. And then when you get done with praying about language ability, pray, God, help him to understand the culture. God, give him insight to the hearts of the people, to understand the culture of where he lives. Because you can't minister to people if you don't understand them. And understanding the culture. And the culture will vary from place to place, and there are many factors that determine all of that. But you need to understand the culture. If you're a missionary, you will not understand the culture unless you immerse yourself with the people. You can't understand it from a distance. Before I went to Thailand, I read 30 books on Thai culture. And read it and studied it, and there were some helpful things along the way, but nothing educates you like just being with the people. Now, to be with them, by the way, they've got to be okay with you being with them. They may not want to be with you. A lot of missionaries struggle because the nationals just don't want anything to do with you. And they're just not interested in being around you. And that's a hard thing to have to think about and ask yourself some hard questions. Well, what am I communicating? What's going on here? How are they seeing me? What are we doing? But pray that he will have language ability, but to understand the culture. Thais, and because I'm from Thailand, but Thais express themselves in different ways. They have a whole language of expression. And so if you're going to communicate with them and understand how their mind thinks, you've really got to have cultural understanding. Pray his marriage will be preserved. Because a sure way to disable a missionary would be to give him marital troubles on the field. And this will sometimes come through the wife, and it can come through the husband. But if he's contending with things in his home, he's going to find it very difficult to have the energy to deal with things outside. And he may keep that secretive, and he may not tell anyone, and they may, but if the marriage is being assailed, and by the way, if your marriage is not in good shape, don't go to the mission field yet. It's only going to get worse. Okay, don't think, well, we'll get there and work it out. You work it out. You'll be working out a settlement. That's what you'll be doing. Get it as best right as you can. And pray, God, preserve their marriage. Keep them together. Next, pray for his family's health. All right, a sick child or something happening with health, again, is going to take up a lot of energy, a lot of money, distract you from being able to, and you understand the devil is a master of disabling people. He wants you to lose yourself in yourself. Yep. Because when you lose yourself in yourself, you'll take your eyes off the field. Yep. So he wants to cause you to be dealing with your own issues. By the way, you'll go through your whole life like that if you don't wake up to what he's doing. Because you'll be forever trying to work yourself out, and then you'll die, and your time will be over. Be careful about that. And so pray for his family's health. God, please preserve the children and protect the kids and you know, bless the family. All right, pray wherever they are that God would enlarge the light and expel the darkness around the missionaries' work and church. All right, because we're operating in places that many times are dark and demonic strongholds. The devil's had those places for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. There's a hierarchy of principalities and powers. The prince of Persia, the prince of and so you're going into places where these demons have been worshipped and you know, invited in, and they've had a dark dominion over the people for a long time. Now, that's just a reality. It's not to be feared, because, you know, who is like the Lord? The Lord is able. God is able. He's stronger. He's, you know, above and beyond any power of darkness. But pray about that. Stuff happens. We have demon-possessed people come into the church, and it has to be called out sometimes. And you know, if you saw it, you'd think you're watching a movie. People thrash and gurgle and all sorts of stuff happens. And you know, it shakes our people that you're dealing with that, but it's just there. It's just there. It's a reality. And you know, you can feel the darkness. People say, what do you mean? I mean, you when I land in America, and I know you have your challenges, but the darkness is not the same heaviness as going to some other places. I'm just telling you. Yep. There are other places you go to, you feel it. When our Thai people get saved, they feel it. They will comment about it. They're fully aware of it. And so pray, God, push that darkness back. God, put a hedge around the local church and help them to have a meeting where they're not disturbed, and keep the demons out. And God, may the Holy Spirit move in that place. I mean, and pray prayers like that, because our battles are won in the heavenlies. We wrestle not against flesh and blood. Flesh and blood is just what we see, but it's coming from a higher source. So pray about that. Pray for the missionaries' patience and endurance, that he's going to keep going, because many don't keep going. And pray that God, when he goes down, I pray that he'd not get knocked out. Now he's going to go down, and she's going to go down, because sometimes you go down. Yep. But down is different to being out. Correct. Okay? A righteous man falleth, but he riseth again. Yep. And so that's your prayer. God, help him, help her. God, be with them. When they go down, God, preserve them, hedge them, strengthen them. Lord, don't let anything knock them out. Lord, you know we need missionaries there. Lord, you know there are souls there who need those people there. And God, give them supernatural strength. And God, help them to be able to get back up again. And by the way, if you can be an encouragement to a missionary, be an encouragement. You know, I'm so thankful for just an occasional well-timed phone call where someone will just, or I'm so thankful for maybe 2 or 3 people in my life that I can pick up the phone and say, I know this might sound silly, but can I just tell you? And so often God has used people to just change my whole demeanor, enlighten my spirit, make me feel better. And so that's a prayer point. You know, God, help him not to go out. Pray for their endurance. Pray for God to protect them against those who conspire to hurt them. All right, because there are adversaries, there are people conspiring to do damage. There are people who'd like to see those missionaries out and gone. Sometimes there are others who are just jealous of their presence. Sometimes there are alternate religious groups, and I'll just leave that there, who've had a vested interest in that place for a long time. And they do not want missionaries there. They don't want people hearing the truth. And so they can be conspiring. And there can be a lot going on. I've learned to be thankful now for what God does not show me. Sometimes I know there's stuff happening, but he doesn't show me, and I don't ask to see it. Just God, get me through. Just protect me in the background. But that can happen. So pray, God, protect him against those who are conspiring to hurt him. Pray God will preserve the missionary in traveling. All right, because most missionaries are active on the field. We're in a place where the death rate on the roads is sort of 1 month of our death rate is equivalent to other countries. And it's very normal for all of us to know people who were killed on the roads. And you know, twice a month we nearly die on the roads. And I'm not joking. I'm talking about it's very serious. We will not go out without having a prayer meeting in the vehicle before we drive off. And I'm not joking. Everybody prays. So that'll be 4 or 5 or 6 or 3. Every person prays before we drive off. And then gives thanks when we arrive safely. And we do that every time. Because we will, on any trip, we will pass many things. We will see the dead. We will see things happen. It's just crazy. People don't follow any rules. It's normal where we are. Half the population does not have a driver's license. And if they're pulled over by the police, they're allowed to just keep going. And it's just not the culture that you would understand in your normal life. The lines on the road don't mean anything. You know, nothing means anything. One way doesn't mean anything. You know, I've nearly been knocked down on roads because it was one way. And I was looking and stepped out, and there were people coming the other way. So it's a real issue. About an hour from where we're located, I think the number is there's 18 graves there of missionaries who were killed on the road. Church of Christ missionaries who all died one day in one van, an hour from where we are, children included, and their graves are all there, and it's you know, it's serious. We're on boats going places. There's no regulations. There's no safety checks. You may be overloaded. The fuel may go up. There's many things can happen. Planes in a lot of places. And I'm just saying that travel is a major obstacle. If you want to pray practically, God, preserve them in their traveling. I don't know where they're going today, but Lord, I know you could go with them. And I just pray that you would be there, and you'd preserve them, and you'd help them to arrive safely. And Lord, we don't want anything to happen to them. And many times there was we had a situation a few months ago. There was a number of us in the vehicle, and it was late at night, and a whole series of things happened that were a bit crazy. I was in the back seat, and suddenly the car was, flew off the road, and there was a large sort of canal of water all up one side. But just where we flew off, there was one little crossing, road there. Just fit one car. And this all happened really quick, in seconds. And so suddenly it looked like we were all going to die, and then the next minute the vehicle flew off, and it just happened to be that little road was there. And in about sort of 7 seconds, we were speeding down the highway the other way. We were going up this way. All this broke out in front of us, around, and then boom, we were going the other way. And everybody was just shaken. And, you know, and I got back to the church, and we hadn't told anyone. I got back to the church. One of my men in Thailand said to me, how did it go last night? Everything go okay? And I said, well, not really. We nearly died. And he said, oh, when? I said, what do you mean when? Well, what time? Well, it was about this time. And he goes, I knew it. He said, I felt burdened to pray. God woke me up and said, pray for Pastor Sehmish. And he said, I got up and I prayed. What time was it? And I said, that's the time. And I just went, okay, well, good. Be sensitive to the Holy Spirit. That's good. But I could tell you many stories. I tell you about missionaries in India who had miraculous deliverance in a day when there were no cell phones, and people would write and say, are you okay? God woke me tonight to pray for you. And so never resist an impulse of prayer, by the way. Amen. You never think it's foolish. If something is suddenly pressed upon you, just go with that. So pray that God preserve them in traveling. Pray that the missionary will have, one good friend somewhere on the field, because we all need friends. And it can be really, really hard when they don't even have a friend. So pray, Lord, please, someone, help them. We all need friends. Could you bring someone that could come along beside and encourage? It might be a national, it might be someone else, but that's a good prayer, to pray about that. All right, so I've given you some things about the missionaries. I'm going to speed in 5 minutes, and we're going to leave and be done this morning, about how to pray for saved nationals. All right, because that's the second area. As your missionaries are starting to win people to Christ, and you're getting those prayer letters right with all the funny names, and you're like, that's odd, and you're laughing, and by the way, we abbreviate them as best we can. If we really put in the full name, it'd be more weird than even what you're getting. So, we just try to abbreviate, but people are getting saved now, and the missionary's saying, pray for so-and-so, pray for so-and-so. You're getting that in the letters, right? So here's some things to pray. Pray for the saved nationals. Pray that they will not go back in the face of persecution, family disapproval, which really matters in the third world, leaving their traditional national religion. People in their country say you're a traitor. You're not a true Thai anymore. You don't love your parents. You're no longer my son. And all of this happens. So pray for the saved nationals that they will not go back. Pray when culture clashes with God, they will learn God's ways. Because their culture, their behavior is culturally based. And some of that's okay, but some of it will be just not okay. And they're going to hear some things from God and from the Word of God. It's going to be very confronting. And nobody around them has ever lived like they're hearing now. And so it becomes a real pressure on a national when their cultural ways get challenged. Now, we never try to do that unless we have to. But beyond that, if a national wants to sing the way they sing, we'll just sing. You want to do what you do, as long as it's not contrary or against the things of God. We want you to be Thai. You're Thai. We want you to be African. We look at me. We're not trying to make you like me. Don't do that. Okay, I'm here to bring Christ, not Australian culture. Amen. All right? So pray that when culture clashes with God, they will go God's ways. Pray they will be patient and understanding in working with their missionary, because the missionary's ways often frustrate nationals, and they will just get frustrated with them. And they won't always say, you drive me mad. They won't say it, but they'll murmur amongst themselves. And they'll talk about things. So pray, God, help them to be patient. Help them to understand the missionary. And God, I know it can be hard, but that's a good prayer. Okay, pray that they'll be able to understand their Bible. Okay, a lot of the Bibles in other cultural languages are very difficult to understand. They have had struggles with translation. Thank you. Yes, I should have brought mine up. And they often can't understand. It happens a lot. I'll say to our Thai people, well, what does it say? And they'll go, well, yeah. I'll say, well, what does that mean? Something very simple. And they'll go, what do you think it means? And they'll look at each other, and you're thinking, no, come on, surely this has to be clear. And sometimes it's just not clear. And they say, I can't understand this. Okay, and I'm glad that I have a King James Bible, preserved and inerrant and blessed, but not everybody has that. And so pray they can understand their Bible. Pray that they will have wisdom and boldness in reaching their own people. Because you want nationals reaching nationals. That's when you start to multiply. Okay, a missionary can only do so much. Your church begins to increase when nationals are winning nationals. And they're going to be shy about that initially, but pray for that. Pray that they will have a job or be able to get income from somewhere. Because there are many, many countries where there are no jobs. And they don't have any money. And there's no welfare. And there's no one helps. And people literally are hungry. Children are crying for hunger. All right, and if you've got someone in the church like that, they need a job. They need some money. They need some help. Okay, and it's a basic. And it isn't that they're lazy. It's they don't have opportunity. And so that's a prayer. Help, God, give them a job. Give them some income because it helps them, it helps the church, and it helps the missionary. All right, we're about done. Pray that they can meet good partners and have good marriages, because often when they get saved, they become alienated from their own cultural base. So someone will say, well, I don't want my child marrying a Christian. You know, I'm not going to allow that. But they need good partners. They want to have good marriages. Pray they'll be faithful to their church services. They're often not used to scheduled meetings. So in Thailand, you go to the temple when you want to. It's not like 10 o'clock Sunday morning. So the whole concept when someone gets saved that we actually have scheduled meetings is like, oh, every week? Yes. People come? Well, mostly. But we want you to come. And you know, they'll wander in 30 minutes late, or, you know, they'll get the services over, but lunch is on, they turn up then, you know, that kind of thing. All that stuff. But just, it's a new thing. It's a new thing to people who don't, you know, look at time and schedule all day. So pray they'll be faithful to church service. Lastly, pray they'll be able to reach their families, because that's very important to nationals. The first people they want to win is their own family. That's their biggest burden initially, is their own family.